There is a strange amount of modern psychology in this ancient parable. One can visualize the scene. Praying within himself, in other words, not praying at all. I thank thee. And on he goes with his tremendous list of accomplishments. That he's not like other people, or even like this publican there. And the Lord then comes in to the inner world of the publican via the exterior, which is actually quite eloquent. He dares not raise even his eyes to heaven, which is found again actually in the 12th degree of the scale, the ladder of humility of St. Benedict. The top is the very start. Wow, I'm not great shakes. And he doesn't dare to look up. And yet he was justified more than the other. Translate. I would take you into two spheres. One, first of all, precisely the vertical, of which the Lord is speaking. One day I was talking to a person who has a lot to do with both rites, East and West. And her comment was, in Italian, they are very humble. The whole of their behavior in church is that of nothing and emptiness. I noticed that actually every time we went to an Eastern celebration, or even a place where there were people of the Eastern Rite, e.g. Jerusalem. And there they were not afraid to express their nothingness. Things like this would be seen in the Holy Sepulchre. On the chapel altar, which belonged to one particular rite, you'd see people, even young people, in this position, putting their heads on the altar, right as though they were resting on the Lord's breast, and staying there for long periods, also embracing it, indicating that they wanted to kiss and embrace the Lord through what was closest to him. I noticed too, when I was a student going around Greece on university money, because I was doing classics, how there it was quite different, the approach to prayer. God was all that was in those 3 hours of incense and otherness. There was no self-glorification, no room for innovation, because it was all received. But it was far more powerful for that very reason. It was pure God. And I have noticed, while looking at the spirituality of Mount Athos, that that is the mode all the time, and all the time means all the time. There's no interruption. Do you know that in the time when they're not in liturgical prayer, and by the way, that is pretty long, it's many hours every night starting at 3. Well, in the times when they're not in prayer, even when they go into some other area like the refectory, it's all surrounded in prayer and never ceases to be. And then when they go into manual work, if you look carefully, their lips are moving all the time. They are saying, without interruption, this very prayer, the Jesus prayer. And they have on this part of their habit, it's actually on the wrist itself, a chotki, the equivalent of a rosary. It's 100 beads, or sort of beads, and they go round and round these, so into the kind of 1,000 mark with regard to the Jesus prayer. Entering into mode and staying there. I remember on this score being very moved by the way also that at La Trappe the invitation was the same. When I got there, about this time of year in 1974, for the first time, and was bathed there in complete immersion for the summer holidays to see whether that was my vocation, I remember that that was what hit me straight away. It was a Sunday when I got into community, and the novice master, having shown me parts of the monastery, said and left me with this: "It's the Lord's day. C'est le jour du Seigneur." His invitation was this: do nothing but spend the time with him. And there is no recreation in the Trappist timetable. There is no time when the mouth is open, so all the energy goes in that direction, the equivalent, in a way, in the West of Mount Athos, because it's to do with uninterrupted contact. And that is your invitation too, because there's no difference between the soul of a monk and that of a layperson. It's just the mode of getting to glory which is different. The essence is the same, and you have to do not less but more if you want to preserve that uninterrupted contact with the spouse of the soul. And it means, e.g., limiting the damage of being in a noisy world. One can't be in that mode of union with him and choose willingly to block him out with things which are incoherent with it. Noise, freely chosen, and you know what I mean. It's your choice. The quality of your interior life depends on the quality of your time. Choose how to spend this Sunday. If God is God, he's God of your timetable. Now, the second is the horizontal sphere. The way in which this chap, who thought himself a brilliant man of God because he was a professional, on the level of his communication with others, didn't even have time to address a word to your man for whom perhaps he was spiritually responsible. It can be our case too, especially if we're in certain groups of people who like certain ways of doing things. We put people conveniently in bottles and labels, and there they are, finished, ticked off. If we had the vision of God, it would be quite different. You know, in the last resort, what matters? It's within the mode of living in which Providence has put us, getting there. And we're helping each other to get there. This week it actually hit me very strongly, helping somebody to get there. A few days ago, I was holding the hand of a lady, and on the other side, the other hand was being held by her daughter. And she was just about lucid and knew what was going on, praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet with her. And I was able to give her the absolution and that last indulgence which one gives to the people who are dying. And a few hours later, she had sailed safely. All I could do was kiss her on the forehead and say, "Safe home." And on she went, and we buried her yesterday. Now, compare that with the kind of things that are going on all around you right now in Ireland. We don't have to have those tragic deaths, and we're responsible for the fact that we too are perhaps a danger to other people's lives, e.g. bad driving. We need all the time to be thinking, this could be my last journey. One day we were burying somebody from our neighbourhood in Carnarvon, and we got to the graveyard, and I was admiring all these lovely graves, and we put our neighbour in there, in one of them. But I noticed a row of graves near where he was being put. And I asked one of our other neighbours what this was all about. They all were exactly the same, and they had a coat of arms or something on it, and a date. And he explained, because he'd been in the war, he'd actually been in the RAF. He was very posh, and he just said this: "Well, it's like this. You see, down there you've got the valley, and that's where they were training in the RAF, and things in those days were kind of a bit approximative, you see. So these young gentlemen, they were in their first flights, and they would go into what was euphemistically called thick cloud." You know what that means, don't you? Snowdonia. Death in one instant, without a tiny fraction to prepare, not even a tiny one. What is happening to a large proportion of human beings right now on the planet at the moment of death? Is there any preparation at all? And at the other end, what meets them? That's what it's all about. And do you see, when it comes to there, comparing ourselves with another human being to put ourselves higher is just nonsense. All that matters is what he thinks of us and our state before him. I just finish. Think twice before insisting on your glory here below. If, e.g., one finds an insult, one can lose glory by responding to it, or gain the true glory by entering into the mode of the Lord, who chose not to answer Pilate, who was actually his inferior. Why insist on being right every time? Who cares, as long as he sees and knows? That is the test, our reaction when brought down a notch by other people. The true friends of God couldn't care, I say, two hoots about what other people thought. As long as he's looking, he knows and has the last word.